welcome to another episode of the Who Dat Jedi podcast. This is episode 133, if you're keeping count. I started keeping count at episode 100. I guess that's a lie. We've been counting, but now we're just officially counting. But anyway, episode 133, and I'm with Fredo and Dave, as always. How you doing, guys?
Doing well.
Doing okay, doing okay. How are you?
By the way, just a little production thing. You sound like a tin can again, Fredo, because I think what it is that you just kind of get laid back and just get kind of chill. So,
Ah,
you
so
get,
like, so like I have to like be all serious and professional about this?
just
Darn.
get your radio voice on, uh,
Let me let you lie about that, whether it's on the 20s and 40s kids and stay tuned for the big reveal and the big prize giveaway. We're giving away 2 tickets to go see. Wait, who should we go see?
what's the weather like outside, Ollie? Space weather.
The space. It's running sideways.
So I said we might have a bit right before I hit record. I said we might have. We're gonna have to do some quick research here, but here's Saints rumors. Yeah, apparently we're working out OBJ. So now let all the LSU fans' heads explode all at once.
My thing is this. OJ, I mean, wide receiver, weirdly enough, has not been the issue so far
No,
these 4 games.
you know,
It's been more O-line play and it's been more quarterback play. And that, OBJ, getting OBJ is good. Don't get me wrong, but we have Michael Thomas, we have Chris Olave, who's looked the part.
Michael
We
Thomas
have
has been
Thomas
out.
Landry.
Michael Thomas was out again today, so he's still not practicing. He's got something
No,
going on with his toe, and Jarvis Landry's kind of gimpy. And then I don't know, Chris Olave came down hard. But anyway, so no, I just heard that as I was walking into my room here to record. Brittany was like, "What?" I was like, "What? So what did I do?
I,
I don't think I did
I'm
anything."
sure she loves. I'm sure she loves that impression of her.
That was not an impression. That was just my rendition. Um, so anyway, yeah. So tonight we're going to be talking about episodes 4 and 5 of Andor, and I think once again we're not going to be like talking, plot synopsis of each one of them. There's stuff that's in my head about this series so far. I guys, I'm digging this. I'm like,
Mm-mm.
when it gets, this is one of the first Star Wars Disney Plus things that when it gets done, I have an audible, oh, I just want it to keep going. So, and I don't know what that is because it don't move very fast. I'm trying to figure out what it is that's engaging me, but it's like when it gets done, I'm like, and it's, I have to wait another week. So,
A good question that we might want to ponder as we get into this is we've talked about this show being maybe the most adult Star Wars that we've gotten to date, and a question might be what makes it so. There are a couple of really obvious answers to that question, but there might be some
yeah.
answers that are a little less obvious.
Well, I got, like I said, I got some thoughts on that too. But before we dive into all that seriousness, let's do a little round of trivia here, and let's see here. Let's start with Fredo tonight, and I got to hold the cards far enough back so I can see them. Who gives Han the order, "From now on, you do as I tell you"?
I believe that would be his future better half, Princess Leia.
That was Princess Leia. It's good rules to live by anyway. So, all right, Dave, to you. Who carries Anakin's flag before the pod race? And I near said podcast, but it's pod race.
Pretty sure that was C-3PO.
Was C-3PO.
Mm-hmm.
Real quick, as just a little aside, what do you guys think of getting C-3PO as a skeleton in the Phantom Menace? I mean, it's kind of interesting because J.J. Abrams, made his arm red in The Force Awakens because he wanted people to know that this is a different era of C-3PO, but that only lasted until the end of the movie. Um, I'm sure George Lucas kind of did the same thing because we're getting C-3PO's origin stories. But do you think? I don't know. Did it just this total aside? Did it detract from you, or do you care, or whatever?
I think honestly, for me, it was more distracting that he was there at all. I mean, put it this way, I never in my wildest dreams thought, gee, I wonder where C3PO came from. So to get that as an answer and to get the idea that he was connected to the future Darth Vader kind of threw me for a loop. And then so the idea if he was just in bits and pieces, not quite put together, kind of because he's a side project of a very talented 10-year-old. I kind of went with it, but I was also like, you only get like a little bit of him in that movie. So he feels almost like he got thrown in because we have to have C3PO in this movie because we have R2. So I don't know. It's not my favorite of his presence of his appearances in the saga.
I agree. I think that was the general consensus at the time too. It was just like, wait, why Darth Vader's droid? Like what? The design was fine, and I also really liked the idea that we got to see R2D2 and C3PO meet for the first time. I
Yeah.
thought that was a smart decision, giving fans that. But
Yeah, yeah, I would have been good if R2 and 3PO just were there in the Naboo court. It's just as doing their thing, so they're always the Greek chorus. But anyway, I digress. I did find it goofy that, like I said, the skeleton was marching out with all the aliens, carrying the flag for the pod race. But anyway, for me, which Star Destroyer? Oh crap! Which Star Destroyer? This is gonna kill me. Which Star Destroyer locates the Falcon during Darth Vader's meeting with the bounty hunters? We've had this one before.
Hmm.
We've had this one before. Is it the Avenger? Yes! Cue the Avengers theme. Yes, it's the Avenger.
I'll see if I can put that in.
Only less than 30 seconds. We don't want to get hit with anything copyrighted.
Yeah.
Um, so, yeah, okay, well. And it's been a slow news week in Star Wars land. As a matter of fact, we have like zero news. So we're just going to start diving right into Andor. Um, so episodes 4 and 5. It's there. Yeah, it's so weird to talk about this because you can't, like I said, you can't say this is what happened in episode 4. This is what happened in episode 5. This is like seriously one just big movie. So whichever one of us thought it was going to be episodic. I think it was all of us. It's not that way right now. It's just like we're picking up where we left off.
Well, one of the things that I, kind of reading back reviews of the episodes later on after I'd seen them, that they made a point to emphasize is that Tony Gilroy and his brother Dan, who I believe is the screenwriter of credit for episodes 4 and 5, they're thinking of this series in increments of 3 episodes. So, you know, set up, build up, payoff. So episodes 1 was the setup, episode 2 was the build up, episode 3 the big was the payoff.
That
Same thing
makes
now.
sense for where
We're
we're going
apparently,
right now. Yeah.
which is what we're getting. We got the setup in episode 4, establishing the idea of what Luthen wants Cassian to do, kind of establishing some of the other stuff around it.
So
This one last week was the build. This week was the build up. Next week will be the big action payoff.
so we can say that where we left off in episode 3 was that he and Skarsgård got in the ship and took off, and Cassian is now part of a small rebel band. What about five of them?
Yeah,
And
something like that.
their whole deal is that they're going to swipe the like money from the Empire. It's
Payroll.
the payroll for an entire garrison. So whatever that might be. Um, but I mean, it's a lot of. Please excuse the connections I'm drawing here, but the only thing I keep thinking of is like all that B-roll footage that you see of Al Qaeda training in the desert. That's what it kind of seems like. You have these people, they're just training for this one mission, and it's it's very tense. Nobody seems to, well, nobody likes Cassian. Nobody trusts Cassian. Cassian doesn't like anybody and doesn't trust anybody. As a matter of fact, he thinks that they're all over their heads. And so it's been very, very, like I said, just intense. And this is one of the things I know I said to Brittany after we turned off to episode 5 yesterday. I said, there is no, and I mean zero, comedic relief so far in this series at, I mean, there's none.
You want to buy some death sticks?
You don't want to sell me death sticks.
I don't want to sell you death sticks.
You want to go home and rethink your life.
I want to go home and rethink my life.
It's just, and even, I mean, even the sky in Scotland is gray. I mean, there's everything. It's just gray, and I mean, I'm that's by design, I'm sure. But anyway, so yeah, we're setting up to bust into an Imperial facility, steal some money, and so yeah, let's just go from there. What are you guys thinking so far?
So one of the biggest, one of my biggest takeaways from this so far, and I brought this up tonight with Kate, was that it just feels very authentic as far as military strategy goes. I know that there's a lot of waiting and planning in military strategy. Wait, plan, wait, plan, wait, plan. And they're showing us that, and I think like it's a great opportunity to sort of establish these characters, and we learn more about who some of these people are and what their backgrounds might be. But it's also a clever way to slow build and build up the tension and slowly escalate things.
And can I say, I'm going to start with this most recent episode because this one was my favorite. I mean, and I'm not saying that it's because it's the most recent. It has been my favorite because one of the lines, she said, what was it? She said, everybody has their own rebellion. I think that's maybe a paraphrase. And throughout, and it's like we keep going back to is it Cyril,
Cyril.
the dude that was kind of fired from Kmart security or whatever. We keep going back to him. We keep cutting to the ISB officer. Deidre. We keep. There's also an Imperial officer who's part of this little rebel band. And then you got the 5 people who are with Cassian, and everybody has their. So I'm wondering if
you're leaving people out too, because you got Luthen too,
yes,
and Mon
yes.
Mothma.
But
we're following all of these different character arcs,
and nobody has a common reason as to why they hate the Empire, I'm wondering if the people who seem to be Empire sympathizers, like Deidre, like Cyril, if this is going to be a story about, oppression or just, raging against the machine, if you will. I don't know. It seems like because that one line, everybody's got their own little rebellion. And maybe, I guess I'm just kind of speaking freely, but maybe it's not a rebellion against the Empire. Maybe somebody's rebelling against, I don't know. There were some interesting lines dropped in this last episode that I loved.
Well, McClunky, I won't do what you tell me, Aaron.
Right?
Exactly. No, because I mean, to kind of piggyback of something you said to start off with, the sense that you get in all the settings, whether it's in Scotland or in is it Andoril or what Andoril, the planet where they're all supposed to be stealing, or Coruscant, or wherever we're at, it's one of oppression. The sets, the atmosphere, everywhere you
And
go,
then
whether
bring in the
it's
TIE fighters. The TIE fighters
yeah.
make you like raise your pulse a little bit. Sorry, keep
Mhm.
going.
No, but yeah, but whether it's Deidre and the ISB agents, their offices and their places are very much. It's almost like it's on top of them. There's no escaping it. Cyril stuck at that tiny, I'm guessing it's Coruscant
Yeah.
apartment with his mom. Very tiny room, very tiny dining table where there's nowhere to go. He seems like he's in a kiddie table, and then of course the band that's with Andor, yeah, it all feels oppressive. It's almost like the the weight of the empire is on top of everybody, no matter what setting, no matter what caste or what rung on the societal ladder they're in. It's like the empire's omnipresent, even
And
when you don't see it in front of you.
and think about how timely this is. They could not have planned this. They could not have planned this. But given where we are right now in our own history, where you have you know, thousands of Iranian women, you know, protesting an oppressive regime. You have, you know, people here in this country ready to vote in November because of what either they want to oppress or stop being oppressed. You know, there's you know, Ukraine. There's all these things. So the storyline right now about, and again, it says, well, the other line was, well, the title of the episode was "The Axe Forgets." It said, you know, the axe doesn't remember the trees that it chops down, but the trees remember the axe.
Mhm.
And I mean, and so it is, and so I think this is going to be a really cool story about how, and again, everybody has their own rebellion, and how does that then coalesce into one alliance that can, you know, bring down, you know, the Death Star and bring down the Empire, you know, in a matter of 11 years, you know. So like I said, I think, like I said, just given what's going on in our own, you know, history
Mhm.
right now, it's so very appropriate.
And I think that's one of the elements where the character of Deidre is really helping because she's seen the pieces kind of coming together. And it's interesting that in this last episode, because she's fighting against other Imperial officers who are like, why are you worrying on my sector? Why are you trying to, intrude upon my area? That's not how we do stuff, and she's letting stuff kind of fall through the wayside, like her reports and whatnot, because she's kind of catching a glimpse of the bigger picture. She's seeing, hey, this piece of tech stolen here. Hey, these people, that ran away over here. Hey, they stole this. So all of it's like it's disjointed, and I think they even said in this episode it's too random to be random, which kind of tells you that she's seeing the bigger picture of the Rebel Alliance coming together. A lot of times that's how it starts. It doesn't start with one grand unified plan. It starts off with a little bit of rebellion here, a little bit of rebellion there, a little bit of a small act here, a small act there, and they're the pebbles that turn into an avalanche. And I think that's part of what the story's trying to tell you is she's the only one who's seeing it right now, whereas even the people that are within it, like whether it's Mon Mothma or Luthen or Cassian, they're only seeing their own individual rebellion for the moment.
So one of the characters in this band of rebels is Karis Nemec, which is like the
Mhm,
younger guy, right? The
mhm.
idealist who has the manifesto. Um, and unsurprisingly, he tends to have some of the best dialogue in this most recent episode, because again, he's sitting here with his notebook, writing everything down and putting his thoughts to page. And he had one quote which was really good about the attack from underneath is always more surprising than the one that comes from above. Um, and I kind of liked that a lot because again it speaks to the nature of where they are right now. I mean, there's this ragtag group, completely off the grid, and by necessity, they have no real funding, no real assets. not a lot of planning. I mean, they're putting a lot of planning into this, but again, you see the holes in their plan, um, and that gets revealed, and that's a nice moment for Cassian in here, where he's like, "Well, no, this is you didn't think this through, did you?" And um, losing some faith in the operation. But I like his character, this Karis Nemec character, a lot, and I think a lot of people gravitated towards him um, because he has a way of sort of cutting to well, again, as a device within this story, as a way of cutting towards things that we're seeing in our real world, in our real lives. Um, it's just speaking to the oppression and a lot of the bull crap that we see um, amongst our leaders, our quote unquote leaders in the world right now. And um, he's a he's an interesting, polarizing kind of guy because I think like some people have looked at him as being this extremist, dangerous guy, and that could very well unfold that way. He could end up being a wild card of some kind. Um, but again, he's sort of the most seductive character so far in the ideas that he spouts.
Just right quick, just to jump off of that, we've already seen characters who are idealistic taken to the extreme within the rebellion. Saw Gerrera, who is so idealistic, there is no bending in him towards either the realities on what's going on or to the idea that people can change. He just sees there's only one way to fight this war, and if you're not willing to do this, you're in my way. So it's an interesting way of depicting the dynamics of what's going to become the Rebel Alliance as it comes together, because we're recognizing that it isn't it's not like it was just a whole bunch of just kids coming together and thinking, oh, it's all gonna work out all right. It's disparate people, for different reasons. They're not all meshing. There's still not a lot of trust because they're basically giving of themselves entirely. Kind of like Luthen tells Cassian, it's like rather than give yourself piece by piece, give all of yourself into one big thing, and that's challenging a lot of them because they're looking to see, well, how far are you willing to go, and how far are you willing to go, and they're finding that not everybody's as willing to go as far, and where those lines get drawn is where conflict will arise.
So, at the towards the beginning of about in episode 4, Luthen goes back to Coruscant, and he puts on his wig and he goes into his antiquity shop, and it's
I
awesome.
love
Yes,
that.
Skarsgård has done a great job. I mean, everything I've seen him in has been exactly the way he was at the beginning of Andor, and now he does a totally different character as in his storefront. By the way, I do want to give a shout out to just give you all a little bit of something to go watch on YouTube. There's Star Wars Explained. No, yeah, Star Wars Explained. Star Wars Explained. They did a Easter egg hunt in his shop, and like so many of the Legends and video game stuff, like there are so many Easter eggs in there, and it's a great little video to watch. But we see his connection with Mon Mothma. Mon Mothma comes into the shop, and you see they're working. You know, it's very much like a mob or speakeasy type of a thing. You know, it's his legitimate business front. You know, but they're trying to get something going. The thing I'm stuck on though is I want to know why Luthen specifically picked Cassian, because that's what he's struggling with at the end of episode 5. Why was he the ace in the hole? Why does he think that Cassian is the ace in the hole? Have I missed something in
Yeah,
the episode so far, or is that something we don't know yet?
no, I don't think we know it yet. It's interesting because in a way, maybe his character doesn't know it quite yet, but he's sensing something about Cassian,
And
about its
let's
potential,
and I'm sorry,
and we don't know.
let's remind everybody that in 5 years, Cassian's going to go from a wild card to what, about third in command. I mean, he's in the upper. So we're in 5 years we're going to climb that ladder quick. Go ahead, Fredo. Sorry.
No, no, no. And I think that points out to one of the interesting questions that the show's kind of presenting, because it's interesting that Luthen, who is the money launderer for the Rebel Alliance, like it's Mon Mothma's the one who gets the money, the who builds the connections, because armies need money, our armies need funding. We're seeing a real life example halfway around the globe right now as to if you have the means to attack and hurt your enemy, you can win. If you don't, you lose. And so Luthen's the guy who's going in between the world of the money power people to the recruitment aspect. And he's the one who understands, hey, you got to get somebody who's able to do this role and that role and give them the resources.
This is all very
And
much like Clear and Present Danger, just so you know.
pretty much so. Oh yeah. Oh yeah. There is something to Luthen's character that's similar in nature to some of the CIA roles, to the Clark character that
Yeah.
Willem Dafoe plays. Yeah, and it's interesting because he's cognizant. He's not even, maybe not cognizant of what he sees in Cassian, but he clearly picks something out of him that he feels is going to be a benefit to the Rebel Alliance. He just don't know it why quite yet, and that struggle because he's doubting himself. That's where it gets interesting for him because he trusts him enough to give him a piece of Skykyber, and I love that they brought that in. But then he's also not sure enough that he's late at night checking on the radio signals to see if maybe he gets a message from his team leader to find out whether or not things are going well. So
Yeah, he's checking
he's
his
not
phone for
sure.
text messages. Yeah.
I think
Hmm.
it's a really natural response that he would have. And I'm not still not sure I did the right thing. I'm still not sure I'm trusting the right person with this. Um, and this is the thing that I came away from the first three episodes thinking, which is that these people have very realistic and natural responses to the things that occur to them. It's like we were talking about Cyril. Like, yeah, his tail's between his legs, and
Can we
his pride is hurt, and he's
can we
seething.
can we
And
talk about him? I'm gonna
yeah,
let you keep going on that because and you had somebody added it to our notes, but again, Brittany and I had that conversation as we were watching because we keep cutting back to him,
mm-hmm.
and I said I'm still trying to figure out why I should give.
You know what's really
I mean,
interesting about that? Okay, and this is just to add a little fuel to that fire. I looked at the IMDb page for the series. He's listed as being in 5 episodes. So, like, his run is basically over at this point. Like, when did he turn up? Did he turn up in episode 2? Or,
Yeah, or just about, or maybe he had a little bit of a
Well,
cameo in episode one.
I don't know if he had anything in episode one. Maybe.
Mm,
Well, I guess that was the one where Cassian killed somebody.
hmm.
So probably he was in there.
He was in there. Yeah, because remember that's when his boss tells him, "Hey, I'm going to the meeting. Don't
oh,
do
yeah.
anything
Yeah.
stupid while I'm here, while I'm gone."
So you may get your wish. Like, if IMDb is accurate, and sometimes it's not. So, grain of salt. But his story may have run its course and it may be done. And so would that for you give that little turn that we've gotten with him over the last couple of episodes of him, licking his wounds, would that make that worse or better in a way?
Well,
Because
and he doesn't seem to be licking his wounds. He seems to be like just stewing and getting more and more ticked. At the end of episode 5, he was looking at Cassian's hollow picture again, with a look like I'm gonna hunt you down like a dog. Um,
There was
so
an interest. There was an interesting video somebody pointed out about that. Oh, the first time you see him in episode five, where he's just looking at the window, and you get the shot of the sun just looking into his face, and it's almost like a serene and pretty moment, and then the sun goes away, and he's back in shadow, and it makes you wonder. I mean, if this is I mean, because we're left with him about his mom has gone to talk to his uncle. We don't know what role the uncle necessarily has.
yeah.
I mean, for all we know, it could be Uncle Grand Moff talking. For all we know, which kind of be funny. I don't think
Some
necessarily think so,
somebody
but you know,
somebody quick go on Wikipedia and do like a search for his first name, because I think I heard something about this. But I do want to say that, I can't remember who. I mean, Fredo, did I said it to
Cyril.
one. I said to one. No, one of you guys at Oktoberfest this Saturday, is that, you know there is a very fine line between one person's patriot and one person's terrorist.
Hmm.
Um, and so you have, and the line that I cannot stand from Revenge of the Sith is, when Anakin says, from my point of view, the Jedi are evil. But he's making a point, right? That, and again, in our very hyper politicized, country right now, it's like, you know, one side sees the other as evil and the other side sees the other side as evil, and it's, so I'm wondering if we're not just going to see the story of the rebellion, but we're going to be seeing maybe a little bit of, I'm put this in air quotes, justification from the point of view of the Empire. That these people are, they're taking my job, and they're blowing up and stealing my money, and they're doing this, that, so.
And it kind of goes to the Mon Mothma arc, what you're pointing out, Aaron. Just as the fall of the Republic and the rise of the Empire downcast a whole bunch of people, it lifted some others up. And that's the juxtaposition you're seeing in Mon Mothma's very own home, which, by the way, I pointed out in the notes I want to talk about. This is the most information we've gotten for that character, I think, ever. I mean, possibly. Okay, maybe in Legends books and maybe some of the other books, but by and large, she had a one scene in Jedi.
FYI, all you single guys, my emotional stage really isn't the greatest.
She had a couple of scenes in Rogue One. The idea that she was married, that she had a kid. So it's interesting that where she's fighting to overthrow the empire because she remembers the time from before it. Her husband, on the other hand, is big buddies with all the empire's top people, and they're having fun, and they're laughing at dinner, and he's having a blast. So the idea that some people would fight to keep that system in place, much like Cyril is thinking of, isn't surprising. It shouldn't be surprising. It's the idea he sees it as his way out from underneath his mom's thumb, underneath this place where he's ended up at, and that's kind of gives a justification, to put it that way, for his behavior, for why he was so gung ho about taking his job in the security forces in the mall cop seriously, because he's looking for a way to get out from all of that, and the idea that Cassian took that away from him is some mighty powerful motivation for somebody to hold a vendetta or hold a grudge at least.
By the way, I want to say I'd be grumpy too if I had to eat my Cocoa Puffs and blue milk.
I love that. You're right. She's feeding him cereal, but
By the way, is it better with the blue milk or the green milk?
it could be either.
You got both.
So this guy, he's fun, isn't he? I like you talk about like, well, are we, what are we still doing with him? But like what you're saying is absolutely correct. It's like you want to see both sides of the same coin, and you want to understand why people would not immediately flock to one side or the other because they have interest tied up with a particular side, or maybe they're somewhere in the middle and they're looking out for number one, like Cassian sort of is still at this point. Um, I I think there's at least a good chance that he may show up again, season 2 perhaps, and turn up at an inopportune time. And
How many episodes in this season again? 12?
12.
14. 12 or
Or
14?
I think it's 12, but I could be wrong. We can check on that. We can double
So
check.
yeah,
on
that would make sense to bring him back as kind of a baddie in season 2, because they got to get hustling on.
You're correct. It's 12.
They got to get hustling on taking us somewhere. I mean, and again, I don't. next week presumably we're going to be busting into the bank, um, and the story's going to move along, but. Um, so it would make sense to just okay, we've given you enough of him. We'll remind you a little bit about him, and bring him back second season. That would make sense.
Yeah.
But Mon Mothma, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, I was just gonna agree with you there. I didn't want to lose sight of Mon Mothma here because, like, for me, this is one of the more interesting bits of the most recent episode. Well, the last two episodes, you don't really see in Star Wars. You typically don't see a marriage under this level of stress and pressure, and two people who seem to hate each other.
Well, and it makes makes sense because Cassian says it in one of the episodes. They live just so fat, and they don't care. They don't see you. That's Mon Mothma's husband. It's the wealthy, entitled, well-to-do. That they're okay with the government doing what they're doing because he got money. He can go do what he wants. He never remembers the driver's name. I mean, this guy's the guy that just can't stand in the entire series so far. And
once again, a good contrast with Cyril.
Yeah,
because Cyril is not powerful and not wealthy, and so you get to see this contrast here too.
And so Britt and I have had the conversations. It's like, can you? I've never understood how like a James Carville and Mary Matlin make a marriage work like that when you are on such polar opposites of, it's a political spectrum, but it's at some point it becomes a belief spectrum. You know what I mean? It's like, and I'm not saying that you have to agree lockstep with your spouse, but if we're that far apart, it would make, living stressful. And Mon Mothma is realizing that her husband is, like I said, and daughter, they're both just entitled, bratty, social climbing.
We don't know.
That's the first impression. But from my point of view, the Jedi are evil. Daughter says it's always about you, isn't it? It's always about you, Mom. It's always about you.
It's not very hard to believe that a future leader of the rebellion would be pulled in about 50 different directions and would be passionate about following those directions and would have very difficult time making time for her family. So then the daughter's critique probably has some validity. I think it was really interesting though. My daughter's watching this series with us, and I've heard that a lot of kids have tapped out on this. They're not into it. Our two younger kids are not watching it, but Olivia's still watching it, and I asked her about it, and she's like, "Yeah, I'm still liking it." And I said, "It's pretty an adult show, isn't it?" And she said, "Yeah." But her big question was, are they being unfair to her when they gang up on her at the breakfast table? And
when they gang up on Mon Mothma?
And I said, I don't have a good answer for you yet. But I think there's probably some truth in what they're trying to convey to her, that they don't feel that she's present enough.
Now, I would agree with you from the daughter's perspective. You may have won me over on that one. But every other interaction that we've had with the husband is that he's just kind of an entitled word that you want to McClunky out.
But just right quick, just to kind of jump on that for a moment, because here's what we know, or at least here's what we've seen. They're not a presence in her life once she is with the Alliance. So, while I'm not necessarily...
So how we know, but yeah, you're right.
But my point being, we in this episode we get okay, it's gonna kill me, the character that confronts Cassian from the group that that later on tells him about his brother who got killed.
Den, right?
Den, that's right. Thank you. I apologize. But there's more than one way to lose a loved one. It could very well be that there comes a point where Mon Mothma has to choose between her convictions and the people she loves, and
Well, and
or
that's
doing something, causes them to go, no, you're going that way, and we never want to see. So again, we don't know that. We're hopefully gonna
yeah.
get some answers about that some way. But it's that idea of doing this, fighting this fight, being in the alliance, being in the rebellion, is gonna cost these people. For some, it's gonna cost them their lives. For some, it's gonna cost them loved ones, and it could be physically, like literally, or it could be emotionally.
Well, and
Where they
I
never
do want
see
to
them
remind
again.
everybody and tell everybody to go do the summer reading a little bit, because there is an episode of Rebels. I think it's called Secret Cargo or Special Cargo, one of the two. And that's when the Ghost Crew has to hustle Mon Mothma. Basically, she is in exile at that point, and
Mhm.
they're getting her, the Empire's coming after her, and they're getting her out of there so that she can be full-time Rebel Alliance leader. So I wonder if we're going to start seeing, some crossover there, because you're right. She's the only one on the ghost ship at that point. So did she just pack up and leave husband and kid behind, or what happens? So
or or did she engineer in such the reaction of the reality in such a way that she could leave them behind, knowing that they would never suffer for it? In terms of, meaning, the Empire wouldn't come after them, wouldn't see them as a threat. They'd be like, no, that's Ferrex, and he's our guy, and look at the way that the daughter's reacting. No way she was ever in on it, so leave him be. Clearly it was all Mon Mothma, and they may be, because she's smart, so she may have done something in such a way in which her departure will never hurt them,
and
even if they would never want to talk to her again.
it's interesting because we in Return of the Jedi, you get a sense of her humanity, when she mentions, many Bothans died, and the way that is, and it's not the same actress, I get it, but the way that character presents that, that she's, you know, she's got, I mean, she's got a bleeding heart, right? And when again she was upset with her husband because he invited these people to a dinner party that she said they just cut off trade routes for, all these people, and they're going to starve. It's like, and you bring them to our house. It's, she's not, you know she's not concerned with, the materialistic things. She's concerned with the way the Empire's, treating people. Um, so
No, wait,
I
before you
like
go.
it that this show is showing more of that humanity and more of that, even in her interaction with Luthen in the shop, she's not 100% confident in things. This is all, you can tell, very stressful, by the seat of your pants, yeah.
There is no safety net beneath her feet. Now, I was gonna say that little line. Somebody, I saw a video where somebody revealed or reminded everybody that planet or that system that they're talking about. They cut off trade routes in a future video game. One of the video games from the '90s. They referenced that place as a place that uh, Grand Moff Tarkin actually had to go in and suppress an insurrection and protest, and basically they just killed everybody. So that, Mon Mothma's husband's, his buddy's actions do have far-reaching implications, costing the lives of thousands. But yeah,
Uh,
let's have 'em for dinner.
well, you also you just reminded me too. Like we were talking about Easter eggs and like how there's not a lot here other than that like antiquities shop. Um, but like the planet name drops are
Hmm.
like some of the bigger Easter eggs that we've got. Where I
We've
think they've
gotten Scarif, we've gotten,
name
Hosnian
dropped.
Prime.
Hosnian Prime has gotten a lot of play, and it's a major system right at this stage of things, so that makes sense. Jakku,
Hmm.
uh, they've name dropped that one, so that's been fun. But yeah, no, I mean for the most part, it's been like, sorry geeks, you're we're giving you something completely new here, which like for me is like, yeah, you're not making me mad when you're doing that. I'm not so secretly really enjoying this.
Yeah, and I think, particularly, And this is one of those things that, where you start thinking about the number of different Star Wars shows on Disney Plus or properties in general. That's what sets this one apart from The Mandalorian, The Book of Boba Fett. Those were more action adventure oriented. This is a different tone, way more dramatic, way more serious, which I could see where some people may say, kind of like Dave's youngest kids, go like, not a bag, we're out. We're here for the laser swords and the pew pews and the ships, and that's our jam, and that's fine. But I love the fact that we're gonna get a different kind of Star Wars with this one, and hopefully when Ahsoka comes around, it'll be a different kind
Well,
of
okay.
Star Wars property.
So Dave mentioned it, at the outset. We're talking about this might be the most adult Star Wars, and why is that? And I think to your point, Fredo, I think that answered what Dave was looking for. Is that this Star Wars is story driven and
Character.
not archetype driven. This isn't the hero's journey. This isn't, I said that, a couple episodes ago. This isn't, it's very much, like I said, it's very much story driven. And like I said, all of they're trying to get across the point, like I said, of oppression, of being against the odds, of being, hopeless, and again, everything goes into that, up even to the point of a TIE fighter literally flying 2 inches above your head, and so they're doing all these things creatively within the show. I think it's awesome to give you that feeling of foreboding, like this ain't gonna work. But I think that's what makes it a little bit more adult, Dave, is that it, like I said, we're telling a story, we're not rehashing a story.
To your point about the TIE fighter, a singular TIE fighter is presented as a threat above anything that they can handle. Like that's where we're at this stage of things, and I think that's just marvelous. I mean, like if you and me and us three, and we got a couple of other people together, and we were like, we're going to take on the U.S. government, and we're going to cosplay military. We would stand no chance against.
If somebody flies an F-16 right over our heads, yeah.
Yep, we'd have no chance, right? And I like that they're addressing that head on, because that is a real world thing that we're dealing with right now with insurrectionists and January 6th and all of that nonsense. And so, like, let's face that head on. I love that. But another thing that, like, has occurred to me in watching this that I think gives it a little more gravitas and a little more realism is that you don't have these bigger than life characters at the center of the story. And I think, Aaron, you kind of alluded to that, which is just like you don't have like this
with
Darth
superpowers.
Vader.
With superpowers, yeah.
They have superpowers and they're flipping around and they're throwing laser swords at one another. Somebody made the example on Twitter, and I loved it, which is just like, can you imagine like the series that we've been watching, just inserting Darth Maul into the middle of it right now? Like what? Like no, like the tone would be destroyed. Like
yes.
It wouldn't work in any way, shape, or form. And I think like that belies the silliness of Star Wars, or some of the, again, these archetypes, these overly drawn out, like hugely mythic figures that like have no real basis in reality. They're meant to be, you can take lessons from them and they serve their purpose. But again, nobody's going to say, well, I really relate to Darth Maul. These are people you can relate to. These are people that are ground level. And I think like it's really interesting to me that it isn't just like Vader or the Emperor or even the like super heavy hitters. We're not even getting like the B squad. You're not even seeing stormtroopers.
You're getting the DMV. Yeah.
You're not even seeing stormtroopers at this stage of things because like they're unnecessary. They don't need them.
Mm-hmm.
And so like that like adds to the realism as well. It's like well, A, they're so overwhelmed, but then B, like you don't have these people marching around in these white, Flash Gordon looking uniforms.
But we're gonna get there, not just because we've seen the footage in the trailers of stormtroopers and stuff like that, but what happened on whatever planet it was that Cyril, like I said, was the mall cop on. He said,
Ferric.
he said, congratulations. Said now, this is fully run by the Empire, and so they've now got a militaristic presence in their, okay, now this hotel is our, office. And I watched a YouTube clip, and it was interesting. They were talking about they're not even concerned about, they're concerned, the Empire is concerned about titles. Said, can you make me a prefect? Because I know there's not much money in it, but I'd really like to be, can I be in charge? But the Empire, that's what it is. It's like, as long as the systems are in line, everything's good. But the minute you raise a fuss, all right, it would be a pity if I had to leave a garrison of troopers here. It's Bespin, right? Lando is minding his own business until he starts lipping off, and then Vader threatens to leave a garrison there. So that's what we're also seeing in this show. So,
And to Dave's point, I don't know if either one of you read. There was a comic book series called Marvels, which came out back in like the late '90s, early 2000s. Beautifully drawn by Alex Ross, but the whole idea was there was this one character who's a photographer living through the birth of the Marvel comic book universe. So the first appearance of the Fantastic Four and Galactus showing up, and Spider-Man and the X-Men, and the whole idea behind it was, what would it feel like to be a regular person living in that universe when all these fantastical characters came out of life? And I get a sense similar in nature in that to Andor, where the idea of Darth Maul or Darth Vader popping out of the nowhere into this story right now would feel overwhelming, because these are not threats to a character of that power level. They're no threat to,
yeah, it'd be like the
even one of the
Globetrotters or Batman being in Scooby Doo. Just when,
yeah,
yeah.
even one of the Inquisitors turning up in here. He's like, oh, he is in video game parlance OP, overpowering. So it makes no sense to put them up against that kind of level right now, threat right now, because they're not worth it of it. Right now they are at the mall cop level. They're level 1.
So let's have a little fun here. Let's have a little fun, just because it was fun. Britt sent me a thing. It was a little cartoon. Have you ever seen the brain, talking to the person who's trying to sleep? And there's anyway, it was the brain saying, there's no canon description of Jar Jar's death, so he could show up in Mandalorian season 3, and the person's now wide awake. Wouldn't it be cool? And I don't think, and this might be one of those things that takes you out of it, but wouldn't it be kind of funny if one of the people in the spy network, that we just get like 2 minutes of Cassian has to meet up with somebody to get a thing, to take to the place, and the spy that he's meeting up with is Jar Jar Binks.
Oh God.
But don't play Jar Jar Binks. Don't have Ahmed do the whole, but it's more of a grown up Jar Jar. It's it's but wouldn't that be a way to kind of maybe save that character?
Save, I'm not sure, because I don't necessarily think about it in those terms. I think it'd be awesome. I think it'd be a wonderful little moment. I think it'd be great to find out some of what happened to Jar Jar,
and have him die in battle, so then people can just shut up about it. But anyway, no, I just thought about that. It would be kind of fun. Anyway, I just wanted to chuck that little bit of humor in there. But speaking of humor, do you think we're going to ever get any bit of the most we've got is a dog peeing on the robot, and that was right up front. That was that was in the very first scene. Are we? Do you think we're going to get any sort of comic relief? Do we need any sort of, again, not gags, not stepping in bantha poo, or anything? But do you think there's going to be any levity coming at all?
Whenever K2SO turns up,
Doesn't sound so bad to me.
that's that's going to be your levity or source of levity. And I imagine it's kind of interesting because while it's never been said that he's coming or that we're gonna get him, I imagine at some point they're gonna do that between now and season two, because at some point this tone has to shift somewhat so that it aligns with Rogue One,
Well,
and Rogue
but
One works well because K2SO is there to deliver a few bits of quippy dialogue.
would any sort of levity take away from the seriousness of what they're dealing with right now? I mean, you can have little light moments where somebody flashes a smile, or there's a connection. Like there was, Cassian with the guy. They had a moment where it was like they came to an understanding, and it was a feel good moment. It wasn't levity, but it was, you could there was
Relief.
there was a relief there. But if you had something like that, would it take away from the seriousness that we're trying to convey here? That it's miserable.
Go ahead, Dave.
I was just gonna say probably not, and that I trust what they're doing. I trust that they would probably make the correct choice.
Again,
there.
we're halfway through. We're almost halfway through the season, and we've only gotten a dog peeing on a robot. But I'm with you. I'm with you too. But it doesn't seem like, if I had to put money down, I don't know if it's coming this season.
Again, like it may be as simple as a quip or a pun that comes during a tense moment, or two characters shrugging at one another when they have a near miss, or like little moments like that. I'm certainly not ruling any of that out. And as you said, there are ways to relieve the tension. We saw that with Cassian and with Den. At the end of the episode, where they were able to just sort of like, okay, we've talked to each other, we've expressed where we are at as individuals, and we're at a common ground now, and we can move forward.
I think in some ways you're not going to get it right now. If you're going to get it at all, I think you're going to get it more towards the end of the season, just because it's almost like it's got to be earned. Right now, there's no reason for them to be quippy or to make jokes, to be lighthearted, because again, they're feeling the oppression of the empire. They're
And they're going into a
repelling it.
suicide mission tomorrow.
Exactly. So that has, there's no way, uh, there's no reason for them to feel like they're going to come out of it unscathed. I think at some point, as the wins kind of begin piling up and we start progressing forward with the characters and the story, and they get more a sense that they can really fight against the Empire, that may come into the dynamic. So I wouldn't necessarily say that has never happened. I just don't think right now is the moment for it. I think maybe towards the end of season one, or maybe in season two, is when we're really going to get that aspect, just because it's necessary. You do need that break in levity, because it's almost like it's going to act like a turning of how we feel about the show, or how of the feeling that the show's bestowing upon us, where that oppression that we've spoken about at the start is going to start to lift, because you're seeing them fighting against the empire and winning against the empire, and every victory is just going to feel like that weight of oppression gets lighter and lighter, and that's when humor comes into the equation.
I mean, like again, I trust them. Like the short answer is I trust them that it'll be fine when we see it.
And
like
they've earned that trust with these first 5 episodes. If anybody hasn't watched these, I mean, they've earned that trust in these 5 episodes. Sorry to step on you, Dave, but you're right.
I agree with you. I mean, I think like at the end of the day, they're going to make the correct choice with that. And like we're evaluating midstream, and we're saying there's no humor in this series. in
I'm not saying critically. I wasn't being
yeah, yeah.
critical of it. It's just
No,
an
no, no. But
observation that there is. I mean, usually by somewhere you've got something, but
it's 100% true right now, and it's part of the reason the kids are not like interested in it because there's just like no humor. There's just none.
Salacious Crumb's
So
not watching his brother being cooked. Yeah,
um, but 5 episodes from now, we may have a completely different story
sure.
because, like, again, we're at the midpoint. We don't know, and again, I'm willing to go along for the ride and see what happens.
Just compare it to the first episode of the first season of Mandalorian. How funny it was when IG-11 kept going, "Nope, we're trapped. I'm setting myself destruct off,"
Yeah,
and Din was like, "No, don't do that."
yeah.
It's like in the middle of all the action, in the middle of all this drama, you had this moment that is everyone was just busting out laughing because it was silly to think about, but it worked. It worked so well. Meanwhile, this show has not given us a single moment like that. You know, that just causes that natural tension release, laughter, and that's by design. And that's where I agree with Dave. Is we got to trust them because these are choices that they're making. It tells you that they understand their story. It tells you they understand their characters. It tells you they know where they're going. So if there is no humor right now, it's by design.
Uh, I guess one last thing that have found interesting, because growing up, I think we all grew up with and it was probably written in a book somewhere or something like that, that the Empire was pretty much just a bunch of white guys, and the Empire is quite diverse in this show, which I find interesting. Um, and they're not just like, and it's not like the um, only the white males are in positions of power. I mean, she has a seat at the table of ISB. She's not in charge of it, but I find that interesting, because they could very well have just kept going with that. I don't know. And again, I don't know what I'm trying to say with it, but it's just something that has stuck out to me because, it's always growing up. It was like the rebellion was about diversity and inclusiveness, and everybody, and the Empire was
White British guys.
right, and that has kind of knocked me off my rocker a little bit, in this show.
I think where I fall on this is that I think inclusivity is more important than the storytelling benefit of it being a bunch of white dudes. And again, like it's kind of an interesting case because it's like the bad guys, and the bad guys are the white dudes, and that's been the case for a long time. Um, but like I don't think the real world looks like that. Yeah, sure, white dudes have done a lot of damage. Uh,
Correct.
but
Herschel
you
Walker.
know, hey, well, villains come in all sizes, shapes, forms, and I think like it's just because you're giving really talented
But
actors work, it's a good thing.
But did I dream that, or did you guys think that? Did you grow up thinking or knowing the same thing, that like or hearing the same thing, that the Empire was, you know,
There was
basically against diversity?
there was one. It was one of those things that growing up, I think, was surreptitiously told, and then kind of everybody just kind of picked up on it as they grew up with the story. Just the idea of, even from a line as simple as bounty hunters, we don't need their scum, and then you look at the bounty hunters he's looking at, and they're diverse versus all the officers in all the Star Destroyer bridges and all the Death Star tables, all old crusty old white dudes, speaking British accents. So obviously there was a real world reason why that is, but I think it will also juxtapose the idea of that the Empire wants uniformity. They don't care who you are, where you came from. They want everything to look the same, to act the same, to be the same. And that represents itself whether it's through the stormtroopers or whether it's through their officer corps. And The
But
idea that the rebels look kind of like a West Coast hippie Coachella uh, audience.
but doesn't
It seemed like it fit.
but doesn't by
Mm,
doing this and by having in this show the Empire being just as diverse, portrayed just as diverse as the rebels, um, doesn't that lend credence to that what we were talking about at the beginning, where it's like, from my perspective, the Jedi are evil, type of a
mm,
thing, because all things being equal, we got similar players on both sides, but it's your perception and your seat at the table, who's the axe and who's the tree, you know,
right.
and um, and as one person, I say you're the axe, but maybe you say I'm the axe. I don't. I think this. I'm just wondering. I'm just really digging this story because I don't know where it's going to go.
And I think that's one of those points that the show's trying to show. Again, by nature of it not being about the superhero characters, about not being the Jedi, the Sith, the people with the you know preordained destinies and sacred bloodlines, by the fact that it's about the rank and file, the grunts,
Mm,
you're able to drill deeper into the elements of the story where, yeah, it kind of proves a lot harder to tell who's the good guy and who's the bad guy, who's the hero and who's the villain. And again, we're saying all this before we get one moment with Saul Guerrera, who we know blurs those lines even more so.
yeah.
So that's, I think, another conscious decision that they're making, not just diversity for the sake of diversity. They're trying to explain and show to us that, yeah, people who are oppressed can be oppressors. People who have good intentions can do evil. And people who've made mistakes can overcome them and become heroes. So it's a complex dynamic there. It's not as cut and dried as the Empire bad and the rebels are good, and therefore,
Yeah.
it's far more. Once you get past the top level, deeper layers, it becomes a jumbled mess.
Final thoughts, Dave.
Oh, just I really enjoy it, and I know that we're broken records right now because we tend to enjoy everything that we watch. With Star Wars, maybe recently Boba Fett was a little bit of an exception, but we even still mostly liked that.
I don't have anything that I can really complain about with this show.
I know,
Mm.
I mean, there's things
right?
I find interesting that I have questions about. I'm sorry, but it's to what you're saying. We sound like broken record, but this is one of those things where it's like, I don't. There's nothing that's made me go, ugh, you know, like
Wait till Frog Lady turns up next episode.
Yes.
riding a Vespa. Yeah.
Fredo, I was just talking about Frog Lady with Liv. She's like, that was really, when I look back on it, that was really the scariest Star Wars or most intense Star Wars I've ever seen. And I'm like, yeah, it was. That was a horror episode right there.
Mhm.
Yeah, Frog Lady episode. I still maintain that was Chef's Kiss, but this is great. It's good. If you're listening to this and you somehow haven't watched it and you hear us like going on and on about it, um, give it a try. It's if you if you sometimes feel a little unfulfilled with Star Wars,
Well,
if
and
you
this
sometimes feel like things are a little
this might be a
kid
gateway.
focused.
That's it. That's it. This might be the gateway for some of those people who are like, Star Wars looks like a bunch of hokey robots and blah, 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 to watch this, and you know, it's a war movie, you know, and I wonder if that would get people, if that would be their gateway into the Star Wars universe, that have seen it, like you just said, it's too kid focused. That this isn't kid focused, you know.
Yeah, and I would also just say like it reminds me in spirit very much of the books in the EU, and just it kind of had more of a I'm going to tickle your brain kind of an approach to things, where it's like you're not necessarily just viscerally trying to stimulate us, you're actually trying to stimulate our minds as well.
Yeah, just finally, I think that the comparison in my mind that I keep going back to, and I don't know if you have ever seen it, is this old Richard Burton, Clint Eastwood movie called Where Eagles Dare,
Hmm.
which is about it's an old World War II movie where they're playing like spies who are trying to infiltrate the eagle's nest and make away with some plans and whatnot. So it gets very convoluted because obviously there's double crossings and double dealings, but that's kind of the sense that I'm getting of this story. It's not as easy to figure out where things are going to go because you're not necessarily playing with all the information at hand. Whereas, say, with something like Mandalorian or Boba Fett or Rebels or Clone Wars, you had a better understanding of the dynamics that play within each character. This one's by its nature, everybody's playing their cards closer to the vest or to the chest, and they're recognizing that this is a survival instinct for a lot of people. So, so it's interesting, and I'm digging it. I'm enjoying it.
So let us know what you're thinking about Andor so far. If we're missing anything here, like I said, I do recommend maybe diving into a little bit of the later seasons of Rebels. Give Rogue One another watch, but also, like I said, check out some of the YouTube channels that are diving deep into. I don't have the time to dig for Easter eggs. Sorry, kids. I just don't have the time. Some of these people who monetize their channels, they do. But there are some, and it's just like, wow, they are starting to, the EU people have to be like over the moon over some of these things. But like I said, check out, like I said, Star Wars Explained, some of those things. They're really good channels. But next week we'll be back with a little bit more Andor talk and see what's going on there. And until then, we'll say who dat?
Who dat?
All right. Well, everybody, you have a great week, and we will see you next week with some more Star Wars.
McConkey.